This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. Cases like that of Shattuck, the woman you just heard about, the former NFL cheerleader accused of sexually abusing a 15-year-old boy, they are shocking, but how common are they? Let's talk about that now with Roger Canaff. He's the anti-violence advocate and child protection specialist. Also, Mel Robbins is here, a CNN commentator and legal analyst, and Dr. Drew Pinsky is back with us. So we're hearing that there are more cases. We've heard about so many cases of sexual female predators lately. Are there more of them, or just we hearing about more? And I say that, I preference that. I want to ask that to you, Roger, because we just got a press release from Gloria Allred saying that she's going to hold a press conference tomorrow. She represents 5 young men who were abused by their teacher. The teacher is already in prison for molesting some of the boys. This is at Grand Rapids University Preparatory Academy. How common is this?
I'd say it's very common, and honestly, Don, I don't believe that the numbers are getting higher. I just believe it's being reported more and perceived more. Sexual abuse, whether of males or females, by males or by females, is something that has ridden the tide of humanity for millennia. It has always been there. There is no rhyme or reason. It's cross-cultural. It has nothing to do with socioeconomic status or ethnicity or anything. From time to time, within the human population, individuals arise that seek to harm children sexually. It's just the way it is. So I do not believe that we are seeing any more of it particularly. I just think we are perceiving it more, and those are good things, actually. It's because the stigma upon victimization is lowering. It's because there are more children, particularly males, who are willing to come forward and state that they've been victimized or admit it.
So that wasn't always the case, though, right? Males were more reluctant to come forward.
Correct,
right?
and particularly males. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Particularly males.
So, Mel, have a field day with cases like Shattuck, the 15-year-old boy being abused by and having sex with an adult. Now, I mean, if true, though, right, is this a case of child abuse?
Well, it's a case of rape, Don. I mean, the age of consent in Delaware is 18, and they do have some of the so-called Romeo and Juliet laws that say that if you are a minor and you're engaged in consensual sexual activity with somebody that is within 4 years of your age, you can legally consent. But this is a woman, Don, who was 32 years older than this kid, and based on some of the facts being reported, clearly went after him. So this is not only a case of statutory rape, but of a predator that went after a kid. She's in a position of power. She's got a lot of money. She's buying the kid beer. She's taking him away for the weekend. Yes.
But and I said comics have a field day because most people will say what most guys will say. Man, when I was 15, I wish I, was as lucky. I mean, Dr. Drew, you mentioned that a little bit earlier. I'll let you weigh in. But Mel, you understand the mentality of most. That's the male mentality.
Well, I think that is the male mentality of about a decade ago. And I agree 100% with what Roger was saying, and I agree with what Dr. Drew was saying in your previous segment, that the more people talk about this and they realize that 1 out of 6 boys and 1 out of 4 girls are the victims of either molestation or some kind of sexual assault before they're an adult, the more that people are going to come forward, Don.
Yeah. So clearly, Dr. Drew, we're talking about there's a double standard in terms of how we perceive female sex offenders. Wouldn't we react differently if the predator was a 47-year-old man instead of a 47-year-old woman?
Absolutely we do. And the point I think all 3 of us are trying to make is that we should not, because the impact on the victim is potentially just as deleterious. In the past, we sort of look the other way, or because of the male motivational system assumed, well, he's being gratified in some way. But the reality is he is being shattered, in fact, and the trajectory of his development is being derailed, and he will realize it years later. He will sometimes feel lucky when he's 15. At 25, not so much. And I want to take quick issue with what Roger said. The problem with sexual abuse in the last 20 or 30 years, I have seen it expand, and it feels to me like when somebody is a perpetrator, they don't perpetrate on one child. They perpetrate on many. And a certain percentage of those are going to become perpetrators. Unfortunately, that's just the way it works. And so it has an exponential growth built into it. And I think after the so-called sexual revolution, we unleashed a certain amount of this in a way we had not seen before.
Yeah, Jean Cassar said in her story before this, they are victims, right? But we should say that Shattuck denies all the charges here. Is the penalty the same under the law for women and men? First to Roger.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mel, since you answer.
Yeah, yes, it is the same, but whether or not a judge sentences somebody to the same conviction is kind of left up to the judge's discretion. I looked
Okay.
at some of the recent cases, Don, in Delaware. There was a guy that was convicted of very similar charges that was, sentenced to 25 years. A woman convicted of those charges in 2007 was convicted to 3 years. So there is a difference in terms of how judges treat them. And just one more thing to Dr. Drew's point. One of the things about predators is it's about access and technology, and the fact that so many kids have smartphones and social media accounts grants more access to people that they otherwise might not have had.
Yeah, Roger, you were saying?
Well, first of all, I very much respect Dr. Drew, and I'm so proud to be next to these two professionals. But I'm going to fire right back at Dr. Drew. I disagree vehemently on one point. In fact, the vast majority of people who are sexually offended against do not themselves become predatory people. It just doesn't work that way. And in fact,
but a certain percentage do.
Well, correct, yes and no, though. There's a lot of psychological research that's come out recently suggesting that sexual offenders who are caught will self-report when they're in front of a judge or a probation officer in order to get a lighter sentence, or to frankly use an abuse excuse. So I understand what Dr. Drew's saying. I have a lot of respect for him, and I think what he's saying is correct. But I would take issue with the idea that we have an exponential problem because more people are being offended. I honestly don't believe that's true. I think the numbers, and again, I very much agree with Mel when she says 1 in 4 girls and about 1 in 6 boys. Those numbers are correct, but honestly, I don't think they've changed. I think it's always been that way. I think we're just perceiving it more.
Dr. Drew, I'm up against the clock. You know how this works. You want to say something about what he said?
We'd have to just look at the data. That's what'll determine who's right and who's wrong here. But it's a massive problem either way. We all agree on that.
Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it.